Admiral Lee Junho stood in the shadows of the observation deck, watching the vast emptiness of space beyond Pluto's orbit. The stars looked peaceful from here, but he knew better than most that peace was just an illusion waiting to be shattered. For 40 years he had commanded Earth's most secret project, a fleet of warships so powerful that even thinking about them made his hands shake. The Galactic Council meeting had ended 3 hours ago, and once again humanity's warnings fell on deaf ears. Ambassador Choi Daeho had tried his best to make the other species understand the growing threat of the Vorthon Empire, but they just laughed at him. To them, humans were weak traders who sold food and medicine across the galaxy. They saw Earth as a planet full of scared people who avoided fights and ran from danger. Captain Park Min-ho walked up beside his old friend, his footsteps silent on the metal floor. Both men had gray hair now, veterans of a war that hadn't started yet but was coming fast. Park carried a datapad with the latest reports from their spy networks scattered across known space. The news was bad, just like every day for the past 5 years. The Vorthans hit 3 more colonies last week, Park said quietly. The Kalari are asking for help again, but the Council voted to send observers instead of ships. Lee nodded, his jaw tight with anger. The Kalari were good people, peaceful farmers and artists who had been humanity's first real friends among the stars. When Earth joined the Galactic Council 200 years ago, the Kalari had welcomed them with open arms. They shared technology and culture, and many humans considered them to be like family. Now the Vorthons were burning their worlds, and nobody wanted to help. What about the others? Lee asked. Are any species willing to stand up to the Vorthons? The crystalline hegemony is scared but won't admit it, Park replied. The Aquatic Federation keeps saying this is not their problem. The Metal Eaters think the Vorthons will leave them alone if they stay quiet. Everyone is afraid, but nobody wants to be the first to fight. Lee turned away from the window and walked toward the command center of the station. This place was officially called Mining Station Omega-7, just another rock processing facility in the outer system. But beneath the fake mining equipment lay something that would change the galaxy forever. The station was really a massive shipyard where humanity had been building its secret fleet for 150 years. Dr. Kim Sora looked up from her workstation as the 2 officers approached. She was younger than them, only 60 years old, but her mind had created weapons that could tear apart reality itself. Her quantum tunneling cannons could shoot through solid matter, her energy shields could absorb enemy fire and throw it back, and her new AI systems could think faster than any biological brain. The fleet is ready, she said simply. All 12 dreadnoughts are fully armed and operational. The crews have been training for decades. Our weapons are tested and proven. The only thing we need now is the order to move. Lee stared at the holographic display showing their hidden fleet. Each ship was 3 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. They had names like Terra's Wrath, Shadow's Edge, Terran Vengeance, and Human Pride. For generations, the best minds on Earth had poured their knowledge into these vessels, creating technology that no alien species had ever imagined. The irony was not lost on him. While the galaxy saw humans as peaceful weaklings, Earth had been preparing for war longer than most species had been spacefaring. Human nature was complex. They truly did prefer peace. But they also understood that sometimes peace could only be kept through strength. The old saying, speak softly and carry a big stick, had never been more true. Park activated his communication device, connecting to Ambassador Choi, who was still on the Council station orbiting SciFiPrime. The ambassador's face appeared on the screen, looking tired and frustrated after another failed day of politics. Any progress? Lee asked, though he already knew the answer. None, Choi replied. They still think the Vorthons will stop expanding once they have enough territory. The Council believes that economic sanctions will make them behave. Some species are even talking about giving the Vorthons what they want to avoid a bigger war, and the Kalari situation. The Vorthons have surrounded their home system. They're demanding surrender in 72 hours, or they'll start bombing cities. The Council voted to send a strongly worded message expressing concern. Lee felt his patience finally snap. For 2 centuries, humanity had played by the galaxy's rules. They had joined the Council as equals, traded fairly, shared their culture, and tried to solve problems through talking rather than fighting. But talking only worked when both sides wanted peace, and the Vorthons clearly had other plans. "Contact President Song," Lee ordered. "Tell her it's time for Operation Thunderstrike." The three officers stood in silence for a moment, understanding that they had just crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Once the galaxy saw what humanity was really capable of, everything would change. There would be no going back to the quiet days when Earth was just another peaceful member of the galactic community. Dr. Sora began running final checks on the fleet's systems while Park started sending coded messages to human agents throughout known space. Within hours, sleeper cells that had been waiting for decades would activate. Human merchants and diplomats who seemed harmless would suddenly become intelligence operatives and saboteurs. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons, but their ability to plan and prepare for any possibility. Lee walked to the main viewing port and stared out at the 12 massive ships floating in space. Each one was a masterpiece of human engineering, designed by brilliant minds who had studied every known form of alien technology and found ways to make it better. The ships could phase in and out of normal space using quantum drives that bent the laws of physics. Their hulls were made from materials that could repair themselves when damaged. Their weapons could strike targets that didn't even exist in the same dimension. But the most impressive thing about the fleet was not its technology, it was its purpose. These ships had not been built for conquest or glory. They had been built to protect innocent people from those who would harm them. Every human crew member understood that they were not soldiers of conquest, but guardians of peace. The communication system crackled to life, and President Song's voice filled the command center. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but her voice carried the authority of someone who spoke for an entire world. "Admiral Lee, you have authorization for Operation Thunderstrike. The Kalari are our friends and allies, and we will not abandon them in their hour of need. Show the galaxy what happens when peaceful people are pushed too far." Lee saluted even though the president couldn't see him. "Understood, Madam President. The fleet will move within the hour." As the admiral turned to give his final orders, he thought about all the years of preparation that had led to this moment. Humanity had spent centuries learning about their neighbors, studying their strengths and weaknesses, understanding their cultures and their fears. They had built their ships in secret, trained their crews in hidden facilities, and developed weapons that could stop any threat. The galaxy thought it knew humanity, but they had only seen the face that Earth chose to show them. Behind the peaceful traders and careful diplomats stood something far more dangerous, a species that understood that the price of peace was eternal vigilance, and that sometimes the only way to stop evil was to hit it so hard that it never got. Backup Captain Park began powering up the quantum drives while Dr. Sora loaded the final targeting data into the ship's computers. The crew members who had been waiting their entire careers for this moment took their stations with calm professionalism. They were ready to show the galaxy that humanity's long silence had not been weakness. It had been the quiet before the storm. The 12 dreadnoughts began to move, their massive forms cutting through space like ancient leviathans rising from the deep. The Vorthan Empire was about to receive a very unpleasant surprise, and the rest of the galaxy was about to learn that the humans they had dismissed as weak and harmless were actually the most dangerous species in known space. The age of human silence was over. The Vorthan forward base at Kepler 442b had never seen anything like what appeared on their sensors that morning. General Baek Hyun-woo was reviewing supply reports when his communications officer started shouting about massive energy signatures dropping out of quantum space. At first, he thought it was a sensor malfunction. Nothing that large could move without being detected days in advance. 12 enormous ships materialized in perfect formation just outside the asteroid field that hid the base. Each vessel was bigger than a Vorthan battlecruiser, sleek and dark like predators from some nightmare. They made no sound and gave no warning. They simply appeared and began moving toward the base with deadly purpose. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," the communications officer reported, his voice shaking. The main screen activated, showing a human face that looked calm and professional. General Baek had seen humans before. They were small, weak creatures who sold food and medicine throughout the galaxy. This one wore a military uniform, but that meant nothing since humans never fought real wars. "I am Admiral Lee Jun-ho of the Terran Defense Fleet," the human said. You have 45 minutes to evacuate all personnel from this facility. Any ship that tries to leave with weapons active will be destroyed. This is your only warning." General Bayek laughed out loud and his bridge crew joined him. Humans giving ultimatums to the mighty Vorthan Empire was the funniest thing he had heard in years. The base was protected by 300 defense platforms, 50 battleships, and energy shields that could stop anything short of a supernova. What could a dozen human ships possibly do against such firepower? "Tell the humans that Vorthans do not take orders from prey species," he commanded. "Activate all weapons and prepare to show these fools what real military power looks like." The defense platforms came online first, their massive cannons turning toward the human fleet. Energy readings showed that the platforms were charging for a full bombardment that would turn the human ships into scrap metal. The Vorthan battleships formed attack formations, while fighters launched from hidden bays throughout the asteroid field. That was when Captain Yoon Hana made her move, her ship. The Shadow's Edge had been invisible to Vorthan sensors from the moment it arrived. Human stealth technology was far beyond anything the galaxy had seen, using quantum fields that bent light and energy around the ship like a cloak. While the main fleet drew attention, she had slipped past the outer defenses and positioned herself next to the base's central computer core. The virus she uploaded took 30 seconds to spread through the entire Vorthan network. It was a masterpiece of human computer science, designed by programmers who had studied alien software for decades. The virus didn't just shut down systems, it turned them against their owners, making the Vorthans' own weapons fire on their own ships. General Beck watched in horror as his defense platforms began destroying each other. The energy shields that protected the base flickered and died. Battleships that had been moving to attack suddenly found their engines shutting down, and their weapons refusing to fire. In less than 2 minutes, his impregnable fortress had become a helpless target. "How is this possible?" he shouted. "Human technology is primitive compared to ours." Lieutenant Kang Ji-won, the tactical officer on Admiral Lee's flagship, was asking himself the same question from the opposite perspective. The Vorthans were supposed to be the galaxy's greatest military power, but their defenses had crumbled faster than anyone expected. As he studied the sensor readings, he began to understand why, "Sir, their entire military doctrine is based on overwhelming firepower," he reported. "They build massive weapons and strong shields, but they don't protect their computer systems. They never considered that someone might turn their own defenses against them." Dr. Kim Sora activated her quantum cannons for the first time in actual combat. The weapons had been tested in secret for decades, but this was their moment to prove themselves against real targets. Each cannon fired projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, allowing them to pass through normal shields like they weren't even there. The first Vorthan battleship took a direct hit from the quantum cannon and simply ceased to exist. One moment it was a massive vessel bristling with weapons. The next moment there was empty space where it had been. The projectile had torn apart the ship's molecular structure at the quantum level, reducing it to individual atoms scattered across. Light-years General Beck felt his courage drain away as he watched his fleet disappear. The human weapons made no sense according to everything Vorthans knew about physics. How could projectiles pass through solid matter? How could energy shields absorb incoming fire and somehow make it stronger? How could ships that small carry weapons powerful enough to destroy vessels 10 times their size? Captain Nam Sunho commanded the Dreadnought Terran Vengeance, and his crew was methodically working through the list of priority targets. The Vorthans had built their base inside a large asteroid to hide it from enemy detection, but human sensors could see through solid rock using quantum scanning technology. Every weapon emplacement, every command center, every ammunition depot was marked for destruction. "Target the communications array," he ordered. "Make sure they can't call for reinforcements. The quantum torpedoes his ship fired were different from the cannons. Where the cannons destroyed matter by disrupting its quantum structure, the torpedoes created localized space-time distortions that crushed targets from the inside out. The Vorthan communications array, a massive tower built into the asteroid's surface, folded in on itself and vanished into a tiny black hole that lasted for 3 seconds before evaporating. Engineer Shin Youngji monitored the battle from the technical control center of the flagship. She had designed many of the weapons being used today, but seeing them in action still amazed her. Human scientists had spent generations studying the fundamental forces of the universe, not to build better trade, ships or farming equipment, but to create weapons that could stop any enemy. The most impressive part was how the human fleet moved together. Each ship was connected to the others through quantum communication links that allowed them to share information instantly across any distance. When one ship's sensors detected a target, all 12 ships knew about it immediately. When one captain made a tactical decision, the other commanders could adapt their strategies in real time. Commander An Dongwook watched the tactical display from his position on the bridge of Terra's Wrath. The battle was progressing exactly as the war games had predicted, but seeing it happen for real was still incredible. The Vorthons were brave fighters, but they were completely outmatched by technology they couldn't understand and tactics they had never encountered. "Sir, the enemy commander is trying to escape," his navigator reported. General Bayek had finally accepted that his base was doomed, but he needed to warn the Empire about what he had witnessed. His personal ship was fast and well-armed, designed to break through enemy lines and carry vital intelligence back to Vorthon High Command. If he could just reach the quantum jump point, he could warn his people about the true nature of human military capability. Admiral Lee watched the fleeing ship on his sensors and made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. He could have destroyed the vessel easily, but instead, he let it go. The galaxy needed to know what had happened here today, and sometimes the best way to spread fear was to leave a survivor who could tell the story. The battle lasted exactly 37 minutes from first shot to final explosion. When it was over, the Vorthon forward base was nothing but debris floating in space. 300 defense platforms, 50 battleships, and thousands of soldiers had been wiped out without inflicting a single casualty on the human fleet. Not one human ship had even taken damage. Dr. Sora ran diagnostics on all weapons systems, while the fleet prepared to return to base. Everything had performed perfectly, but she knew this was just the beginning. The weapons they had used today were the basic versions, designed for conventional warfare against traditional enemies. The really devastating equipment was still secret, waiting for threats that required more extreme solutions. Captain Park activated the communication system to contact Earth and report their success. President Song would be relieved to know that the Kalari home system was safe for now, but everyone understood that this victory would bring new challenges. The galaxy had seen human military power for the first time, and nothing would ever be. The same General Bayek reached the quantum jump point with his engines smoking and his hull torn by debris. As his ship prepared to leap across space back to Vorthon territory, he recorded a message that would change galactic history forever. "Command, this is General Bayek Hyunwoo, reporting emergency intelligence. The humans are not what we thought they are. They have weapons that ignore our shields and defenses that turn our own systems against us. They destroyed Forward Base 7 in less than an hour without taking any damage. We need to reconsider everything we know about human military capability immediately." The message would reach Vorthon High Command in 6 hours, and within a day it would spread to intelligence agencies across the galaxy. Species that had dismissed humanity as weak and irrelevant would suddenly be forced to ask themselves a terrifying question: if the humans had been hiding weapons like this. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called just 18 hours after news of the Vorthon defeat reached SciFiPrime. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the Great Chamber, their faces showing confusion, fear, and suspicion in equal measure. For 200 years, the Council had operated under the assumption that they knew the military capabilities of every member species. But apparently they had been very wrong about the humans. Ambassador Choi Daeho walked into the chamber knowing that every eye was on him. Yesterday, he had been dismissed as the representative of a weak and irrelevant species, but today, everyone wanted answers about how his people had destroyed the galaxy's most feared military installation without losing a single ship. He carried himself with the same calm dignity he had always shown, but there was something different in his manner. A quiet confidence that made other ambassadors nervous. Council Speaker Veltar called the session to order, with her 4 arms trembling slightly. She was an ancient crystalline being who had led the council for 60 years, and she had never faced a situation like this. When she spoke, her translated voice carried the weight of someone who understood that the galactic order was changing. In ways nobody had predicted, Ambassador Choi, the council demands an immediate explanation for yesterday's military action. How does a species known for peaceful trade possess weapons capable of such destruction? Why was the existence of this fleet kept secret from the galactic community? Choi stood slowly and looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. Some appeared angry at being deceived, others seemed frightened of what humanity might do next, and a few looked calculating as they tried to figure out how to benefit from this new situation. He had prepared for this moment for decades, knowing that someday humanity's secret would be revealed. Honored representatives, my people have never lied to this council. We told you we were peaceful, and we are. We told you we preferred diplomacy to warfare, and we do. We told you we wanted to trade and share knowledge with our galactic neighbors, and that remains true. What we did not tell you was that we had also prepared for the possibility that our peaceful nature might be seen as weakness by those who would do us harm. The Aquatic Federation's ambassador, a being that looked like a giant octopus with crystalline eyes, spoke next. His species had always been neutral in galactic conflicts, preferring to stay in their underwater cities and avoid surface politics. You claim to be peaceful, yet you built weapons of mass destruction in secret. How do we know you won't use these weapons against other council members? How can we trust a species that has been hiding such military power for centuries? Choi had expected this question, and his answer was simple and direct. Because if we wanted to conquer the galaxy, we would have done it already. Our fleet has existed for over a century, and we have used it exactly once to defend our allies from an unprovoked attack. We could have destroyed every military installation in known space years ago, but instead, we chose to wait and hope that reason would prevail. Admiral Rextar of the Galactic Defense Force stood up in his section of the chamber. He was a proud warrior from a species that valued military strength above all else, and the ease with which humans had defeated the Vorthons challenged everything he believed about warfare. His people had fought the Vorthons for decades, and barely held their own. Yet the humans had made it look simple. Your weapons ignore our understanding of physics, he said with barely controlled frustration. Your ships move faster than our sensors can track them. Your tactics are unlike anything in our military databases. How long have you been studying us? How much do you know about our defenses and capabilities? Dr. Lim Jaemin, who served as Choi's scientific advisor, answered this question. He was a xenobiologist who had spent his career studying alien psychology and military doctrine, and his insights had helped design many of humanity's tactical advantages. We have been studying everyone since the day we joined this council. We studied your technologies, your cultures, your military histories, and your strategic thinking. We did this not to find ways to attack you, but to understand how to defend ourselves if attacked. Every species in this chamber has done the same thing. The difference is that we were more thorough about it. President Song Mirai appeared on the chamber's main screen, broadcasting from Earth. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but when she spoke, every representative in the chamber listened carefully. The leader of a species that could destroy civilizations with ease commanded respect, even from those who had never taken her seriously before. The Galactic Council has spent 2 centuries maintaining peace through discussion and compromise, and my people respect that approach. But when the Vorthons began attacking innocent civilizations, you chose to send observers instead of defenders. When they threatened genocide against the Kalari, you voted to express concern rather than take action. We could not stand by and watch good people suffer when we had the power to help them. The Metal Eater representative, a robotic being that spoke in mathematical formulas, asked the question that everyone was thinking. What are your intentions now? Do you plan to establish human dominance over the galaxy? Will you use your military superiority to impose your will on other species? The chamber fell silent as everyone waited for the answer that would determine the future of galactic civilization. Some species were already calculating how to align themselves with this new power, while others were wondering if they should prepare for war against an enemy they couldn't hope to defeat. President Song's response was measured and thoughtful. We want the same thing we have always wanted: peace, prosperity, and the right for all species to develop their own cultures without fear of conquest or destruction. The difference is that now you know we have the power to enforce that peace, if necessary. We hope that knowledge will make those who dream of conquest think twice before acting on their ambitions. Meanwhile, In deep space near the Vorthon border, Captain Nam Sunho was leading a reconnaissance mission to gather intelligence on enemy movements. His ship, the Terran Vengeance, was using advanced stealth technology to observe Vorthon fleet movements without being detected. What his sensors revealed was disturbing. "Sir, they're mobilizing everything they have," Lieutenant Kang Jiwon reported from his position at the tactical station. "Every battleship, every carrier, every support vessel is being pulled back to defend their core systems. They're also broadcasting recruitment messages across their entire empire, calling for emergency conscription." Captain Nam studied the tactical display with growing concern. The Vorthons were clearly preparing for a massive military response, but their movement suggested something more dangerous than simple retaliation. Intelligence reports indicated they were also researching weapons of mass destruction, possibly planning to use biological or nuclear weapons against human colonies. "Contact Admiral Lee immediately," he ordered. "Tell him the Vorthons are preparing for total war, and they're not planning to follow the rules of civilized warfare." Back on Earth, President Song received the intelligence report during a meeting with her top military advisors. The situation was developing exactly as the worst-case scenarios had predicted. The Vorthons were so humiliated by their defeat that they were willing to risk everything on a desperate counterattack. "Ma'am, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from several Vorthon research facilities," General Ko Sang-woo reported. "Our analysis suggests they're developing planet-killer weapons, probably planning to glass our colonies before we can intervene with the fleet." The president felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. Humanity had revealed its military power, hoping to deter further aggression, but instead it seemed to have driven their enemies to even more extreme measures. Now she faced a choice that no leader should ever have to make: allow the genocide of human civilians or authorize the use of humanity's most devastating weapon. Dr. Kim Sora had been working on the stellar disruptor for 20 years, hoping she would never need to complete it. The weapon could destabilize a star, causing it to collapse or explode, effectively destroying entire solar systems. It was the ultimate deterrent, a weapon so terrible that its very existence should prevent wars rather than win them. "The prototype is functional," she reported to the Emergency Defense Council. "We could deploy it within 72 hours if necessary. But using such a weapon would change us forever. Once we cross that line, we become the kind of species we've always tried not to be." Admiral Lee understood the weight of what they were discussing. Humanity had built its secret fleet to protect innocent life, not to commit genocide on a galactic scale. But if the Vorthons were really planning to use weapons of mass destruction against human colonies, they might have no choice but to respond with overwhelming force. "How many Vorthon worlds would be affected?" he asked quietly. "Their capital system has 12 billion inhabitants," Dr. Sora replied. "But if we target their industrial worlds instead, we could cripple their military production while minimizing civilian casualties. The choice is ours to make." As the human leadership debated their options, the rest of the galaxy was taking sides. The human fleet divided into 3 battle groups as they approached Vorthon space, each targeting a different sector of the enemy empire. Admiral Lee Junho commanded the main assault force heading directly for SciFiPrime, while Captains Park, Minho, and Nam Sunho led smaller groups to hit industrial and military targets throughout the outer systems. It was the largest coordinated military operation in human history, and possibly the most important battle the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Oh Sungmin stood on the bridge of his Dreadnought as the first battle group dropped out of quantum space near the Vorthon capital system. What they found waiting for them defied every prediction their strategic computers had made. The Vorthons had assembled over 400 ships in defensive formations around their home world, including massive super dreadnoughts that were twice the size of human vessels. "Sir, enemy fleet composition is beyond our initial estimates," reported Commander An Dongwook from his tactical station. "They've pulled ships from across their entire empire to defend the capital. We're looking at the largest space fleet ever assembled by any single species." Admiral Lee studied the tactical display with calm professionalism. He had expected the Vorthons to make their final stand here, but the sheer number of enemy ships was impressive even by human standards. However, quantity had never been a substitute for quality, and the human fleet had advantages that no amount of enemy ships could overcome. "All ships, activate quantum networking protocols," he ordered. "Let's show them what 12 ships can do when they think as one." The quantum networking system was humanity's greatest tactical innovation, allowing all ships in the fleet to share their processing power and sensor data instantly. Instead of 12 separate vessels, the human fleet became a single super-intelligent entity capable of thinking and reacting faster than any biological mind could comprehend. Each ship knew what every other ship was doing, and all tactical decisions were made with perfect coordination. Dr. Kim Sora activated the enhanced weapons systems that had been kept secret even from most of the human fleet. These were not the basic quantum cannons they had used against the Vorthon forward base. These were reality-warping weapons that could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. She had hoped never to use them, but the survival of human civilization might depend on their effectiveness. The first Vorthon attack wave consisted of 200 heavy fighters launched from carriers positioned behind the main battle line. They came at the human fleet in perfect formation, their pilots brave and well-trained despite knowing they faced impossible odds. What they encountered was beyond their worst nightmares. Engineer Shin Youngji engaged the phase shift generators, causing the human ships to flicker in and out of normal space-time. The Vorthon fighters found themselves shooting at targets that weren't really there, their weapons passing harmlessly through ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Meanwhile, the human vessels could still fire back, their weapons reaching across dimensional barriers to destroy enemies that thought they were safe. Phase generators operating at maximum efficiency, Shin reported. Enemy fire is having zero effect on our hulls. All ships are maintaining perfect structural integrity. Captain Yoon Hana's stealth destroyer Shadow's Edge had slipped through the Vorthon defensive perimeter and was now operating behind enemy lines. Her mission was to disable the planetary defense grid that protected SciFiPrime itself, but what she found when she reached the planet's surface was horrifying. "Admiral, they've turned their capital into a fortress," she reported. "Every city has been converted into a military installation. They're using civilian populations as human shields around their weapons platforms. If we attack the defense grid, we'll be hitting hospitals, schools, and residential areas." This was exactly what Admiral Lee had feared most. The Vorthons were so desperate to win that they were willing to sacrifice their own people to protect their military assets. It was a tactic that most civilized species considered unthinkable, but desperation could drive even advanced cultures to barbarity. "All ships, modify targeting protocols," he ordered. "We disable their weapons without harming civilian areas. I don't care how difficult it makes our job. We're not going to become the monsters they think we are." The main battle began when the Vorthon super dreadnoughts opened fire with their planet-killer cannons. These weapons could crack the crust of a world with a single shot, and they were aimed directly at the human flagship Terra's Wrath. What happened next would be discussed in military academies for centuries to come. Dr. Sora's energy absorption. Shields didn't just deflect the incoming fire, they captured it, amplified it, and redirected it back at the enemy. The planet-killer beam that should have destroyed Admiral Lee's ship instead struck 3 Vorthon battlecruisers and vaporized them instantly. The enemy's own weapons had become humanity's ammunition. "Impossible," whispered Emperor Krexvol from his throne room deep beneath the surface of SciFiPrime. "No species has technology that advanced. They must be using some kind of ancient alien artifacts, but there were no ancient artifacts. Just human ingenuity applied to problems that other species had never bothered to solve. While most civilizations focused on building bigger guns and stronger armor, humanity had studied the fundamental nature of energy itself. They had learned to manipulate matter and force at the quantum level, making them capable of feats that seemed like magic to less advanced minds. Captain Nam Sunho's battle group was systematically destroying Vorthon industrial facilities in the outer systems. His quantum torpedoes could phase through planetary shields and detonate inside factories and shipyards, crippling the enemy's ability to build new weapons. But what disturbed him most was the complete lack of civilian evacuations, sir. Intelligence indicates that Vorthon military doctrine treats all citizens as potential soldiers, Lieutenant Kang Ji-won reported. They're not evacuating civilians because they consider industrial workers to be legitimate military targets. This revelation forced the human commanders to make impossible choices. They could destroy the Vorthon war machine quickly and decisively, but only by accepting massive civilian casualties. Alternatively, they could fight a longer war that would ultimately cost more lives on both sides, but allow them to maintain their moral principles, Target the power systems and transportation. Networks, Nam ordered. We shut down their industry without killing the workers. It's harder, but it's the right thing to do. Back at Vorthan Prime, the main battle was reaching its climax. The enemy fleet had lost over half its ships, but they were fighting with desperate courage that earned even their enemies' respect. Some Vorthan captains were ramming their damaged vessels into human ships, hoping to break through the phase shields through sheer determination. Emperor Krexvol watched the battle from his command bunker and made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his short life. If his empire was going to fall, he would make sure that nobody could claim victory over its ruins. Deep beneath the Imperial Palace lay a weapon that could destroy the entire planet, turning Vorthan Prime into a radioactive wasteland that would poison space for light years in every direction. Activate the core destabilizer, he commanded his technicians. If we cannot have victory, then nobody shall have survival. Engineer Shin Youngji detected the energy buildup from her position aboard the human flagship. Her sensors showed massive power fluctuations deep within the planet, consistent with a weapon designed to cause total planetary destruction. She had less than 10 minutes to find a solution, or 12 billion Vorthan civilians would die along with their insane emperor, Admiral. They're trying to destroy their own planet, she reported. The energy signature suggests a core destabilizer that will cause the entire world to explode like a miniature supernova. Dr. Sora had been working on theoretical solutions to this exact problem for decades, hoping she would never need to implement them. The stellar disruptor technology could be reversed, creating a containment field that would trap the planetary explosion and prevent it from spreading to nearby systems. I can contain the blast, she told Admiral Lee, but only if we position the fleet in a perfect sphere around the planet. Any gap in our formation and the explosion will break through. We'll have to stay in position until the core burns itself out, which could take hours. Do it, Lee ordered without hesitation. We didn't come here to commit genocide, and we're not leaving 12 billion people to die because their leader is insane. The 12 human dreadnoughts moved into position around Vorthan Prime, just as the core destabilizer reached critical mass. The planet's surface began to crack and glow as incredible energies built up in its molten center. Emperor Krexvol's final transmission reached the human fleet just before the explosion began. You claim to be peaceful, but you have brought war to our doorstep. You say you want to protect innocent life, but you have destroyed our empire. What manner of beings are you that can speak of mercy while wielding such terrible power? Admiral Lee's response was broadcast across the galaxy, recorded by every intelligence service and news agency in known space. His words would be quoted in history books for generations to come, defining humanity's place in the galactic community forever. 6 months after the fall of the Vorthan Empire, the galaxy had settled into a new reality that nobody could have predicted. Fleet Admiral Lee Junho stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above Earth, watching construction crews building new dreadnoughts in the expanded shipyards. The secret was out now, and humanity no longer needed to hide their military capabilities from their galactic neighbors. The Terran Protectorate had been established by popular vote in the reformed Galactic Council, with 43 species requesting human protection from future threats. It was not an empire in the traditional sense. Member worlds retained their independence and cultures while contributing to collective defense. Human dreadnoughts patrolled the major space lanes, ensuring that trade could flow freely without fear of piracy or conquest. Ambassador Park Yunji had replaced Choi Daeho as humanity's representative to the Council, and her first speech had redefined the relationship between Earth and the galaxy. She was younger than her predecessor but carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who spoke for the most powerful military force in known space. We never wanted to rule, she had told the assembled representatives. We wanted to survive. But if our survival requires us to enforce peace upon a chaotic galaxy, then that is what we will do. Those who choose cooperation will find us to be generous allies. Those who choose conquest will find us to be implacable enemies. Dr. Yu Bongsik led the humanitarian effort on the former Vorthan worlds, helping survivors rebuild their civilization without the militaristic culture that had led to their downfall. It was delicate work, requiring patience and understanding to help an entire species learn new ways of thinking about conflict and cooperation. The younger generation is adapting well, he reported to the Council. Vorthan children who grow up In our schools, learn that strength comes from building rather than destroying. Give us a generation, and the galaxy will have new allies instead of old enemies. Captain Kim Tae-hyun commanded the integration program that brought alien technologies into human designs while sharing human innovations with friendly species. The exchange was not entirely one-sided. Other civilizations had developed solutions to problems that human scientists had never encountered, and the combination of different approaches often produced results that exceeded what any single species could achieve alone. The crystalline hegemony's energy storage methods combined with our quantum manipulation technology has produced power systems 30% more efficient than either approach alone, he reported. The Aquatic Federation's biological computers interface perfectly with our AI networks. We're not just building better weapons, we're creating better everything. But not all the changes were welcomed by everyone. Several species that had enjoyed positions of power under the old galactic order found themselves marginalized in the new system. The Metal Eaters had maintained their neutrality, but their influence had diminished as other species aligned themselves with human leadership. The crystalline hegemony's military had been disbanded in favor of human protection, leaving many of their warriors feeling useless and resentful. Former General Rextar of the old Galactic Defense Force had become one of the most vocal critics of human dominance. He spoke at underground meetings on various worlds, arguing that the galaxy had simply traded one form of tyranny for another. They say they want peace, he told his followers. But peace enforced by superior firepower is not true peace. It is submission disguised as cooperation. How long before they decide that our independence is inconvenient? How long before their protection becomes our prison? His words found audiences among species that valued military tradition and personal honor. Above collective security, the warrior cultures that had once competed for dominance now found themselves united by their resentment of human superiority. Secret communications passed between military commanders who remembered when strength was measured by the size of one's fleet rather than the wisdom of one's diplomacy captain. Yoon Hana detected these communications during routine patrols aboard the Shadow's Edge. Her stealth destroyer was perfectly suited for intelligence gathering, and human code-breaking abilities meant that very few secrets remained hidden for long. What she discovered was troubling but not entirely unexpected. "Admiral, we have confirmed evidence of coordinated resistance activities," she reported. "At least 7 species are involved in planning some kind of action against the Protectorate. Their communications are heavily encrypted, but our analysis suggests they're planning to strike at our shipyards and supply lines." Admiral Lee considered this information with the same calm professionalism he had always shown. He had expected some resistance to the new order. No major change in galactic politics could occur without creating opposition from those who benefited from the old system. The question was whether this resistance could be managed through diplomacy or would require more direct intervention. "What's their timeline?" he asked. "Intelligence suggests they're planning to move within the next month. They want to strike before we complete construction of the new Dreadnought squadrons. If they can cripple our industrial capacity, they might be able to restore the balance of power to something closer to the old status quo." Dr. Kim Sora had been working on defensive systems for the shipyards ever since the Protectorate was established. She understood that humanity's industrial capacity was now a strategic target that required protection equal to any military installation. Her latest innovation was a network of automated defense platforms that could coordinate their responses, using the same quantum networking technology that made human fleets so effective. "The yards are protected," she assured the Admiral. "Any attack on our construction facilities will be met with overwhelming defensive fire, but I'm more concerned about attacks on civilian targets. If they can't hurt our military, they might try to terrorize our population into withdrawing from galactic affairs." This possibility had kept President Song awake for many nights since the Protectorate was established. Humanity had accepted the responsibility of galactic peacekeeping, but that responsibility came with risks that previous generations had never faced. Earth itself might become a target for those who opposed the new order. "Double the patrol schedules around Sol System," Lee ordered, "and make sure our defensive systems are visible to any potential attackers. Sometimes the best way to prevent a war is to make it clear that starting one would be suicidal." Meanwhile, on the former Vorthan world of Kepler 442b, Construction crews were building a memorial to the soldiers who had died in the first battle of the Human War. The memorial was designed by both human and Vorthan artists, symbolizing the cooperation that could exist between former enemies when guided by wisdom rather than hatred. Commander An Dongwook supervised the construction while reflecting on how much had changed since that first battle. The Vorthan base that had once threatened the galaxy was now a refugee center where displaced populations from across known space could find safety and new opportunities. Former soldiers had become teachers and builders, using their skills to create rather than destroy. "Sir, we're receiving a delegation from the Metal Eater Confederation," his aide reported. "They're requesting a meeting to discuss possible membership in the Protectorate." This was significant news. The Metal Eaters had maintained strict neutrality throughout the recent conflicts, but their request for membership suggested that even the most independent species were beginning to see the benefits of human protection. Their advanced manufacturing capabilities would be a valuable addition to the Protectorate's industrial base. The delegation was led by Unit Prime 7743, a robotic being that spoke in mathematical formulas but had learned to communicate in more conventional languages when dealing with biological species. Its message was direct and logical, as was typical for its kind. Analysis indicates that galactic stability has improved by 37% since establishment of Terran Protectorate. Probability of large-scale warfare has decreased to less than 5%. Request admission to Collective Defense Organization for mutual benefit of all participants. Ambassador Park accepted the application with the same careful diplomacy that characterized all human interactions with potential allies. The Protectorate was not seeking to absorb other civilizations, but to create a framework where different species could cooperate while maintaining their unique identities. "The Metal Eater Confederation is welcome to join our alliance," she replied. "Your industrial capabilities and logical approach to problem-solving will strengthen our collective security. We look forward to a long and mutually beneficial partnership." As news of the Metal Eaters' decision spread throughout the galaxy, other neutral species began reconsidering their positions. The Aquatic Federation expanded their cooperation agreements with Earth, while several smaller civilizations that had been fence-sitting requested formal protection treaties. The resistance movement that had been building momentum suddenly found itself isolated and outnumbered. Former General Rexitar realized that his cause was losing support as more species chose cooperation over confrontation. His final message to his remaining followers was a bitter acknowledgement of humanity's ultimate victory. They have won not through conquest, but through competence.